Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2022 Senate and governor elections and doing part one of a two-part series talking about the best case scenarios for these parties in the midterms. Don't worry, I'll do a House version of this later, but the thing with House is that it changes a lot, so that'll be an October-November video. But for now, this is going to be a video in August, obviously, and as of today, where I think the best case scenarios are for both parties. So let's define a best case scenario. Now, I know technically the best case scenario for the Democrats would, be them winning every state. But the thing is, that is extremely unlikely. And by extremely unlikely, meaning it's like literally impossible for them to win South Dakota or, Oklahoma or whatnot. So this is like the realistic kind of best case scenario, right? Like it's kind of like, okay, anything that has less than a 10% chance of happening doesn't really count. So basically, the upper, 90% of, like, what is the upper 90% of outcomes for the Democrats in both the Senate and the governor map? So let's get into it here. So in a best case scenario, Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, Vermont would all be safe by margin. For the Republicans, they'd still have their safe states in the best case scenario. Obviously, for the Democrats, best case in Alaska would be probably Murkowski winning because she'd be more likely to vote with them. Kansas wouldn't be safe in a best case scenario, but it's one of those states where it would be likely, like it would fall under 15%, but it wouldn't really be contested. Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina wouldn't be safe. And yeah, that would be it. So for I'm also going to do a few more states for the Republicans here. So Indiana and Kentucky be the next two, and they would be likely by margin, but safe by probability. So in Indiana, Biden lost Indiana by like 13 or 14. The best case for Democrats would be kind of running even with Biden here because their candidate Thomas McDermott has the ability to do better than Biden in the northern part of the state, but probably a little worse in the Indianapolis suburbs. So I think that in the best case he'd run even with Biden, although in all likelihood he'll probably run a few points behind Biden statewide. In Kentucky, same thing. I mean, in 2016, Rand Paul only won by 15 points. So again, hypothetically, best case for Charles Book would be him, kind of holding on to the margins that Jim Gray got in Eastern Kentucky and then gaining in the Cincinnati Actives, which are trending left. So yeah. Then Kansas, obviously, we talked about that. Missouri and Iowa would be up next. Missouri and Iowa, again, are just states where. So first of all, Iowa would kind of be Franken running even with Trump or with Biden in Iowa, and what we saw with Seltzer, where Seltzer only had Grassley up by 8, and it's actually very reasonable. Like I could see Grassley winning by under 15 even in a normal scenario. So I guess best case for Frank would be him running even with Biden here, although it's not likely to happen. And in Missouri, it would just be again. I think Biden lost Missouri by like 14 or 15. It would probably be Trudy Bush Valentine running even to a little ahead of Biden. So yeah, that's it. And then lastly, Utah, because again, Utah is one of those states where uh, Evan McMullen has like maybe a 5% chance of winning, if that. So it exists, but it's not very likely. But I think at best he loses by like 7 or 8, and even then that's a stretch. So yeah. Also, Hawaii should be safe for the Democratic Party. And then also South Carolina is another one of those states where I would see it being kind of a margin type state. Like a lot of these are just marginal, right? Where Tim Scott would definitely win, but he'd win by maybe 12 instead of 17, which he's expected to win by. So, yeah, that's it. Now let's get into our likely Democratic states. Again, this is by margin here, and I think the first would be New Hampshire. Like at best, I think Hassan would win by 9 or 10. Again, Biden won it by 7, and Hassan did get a fair amount of crossover support in 2016. And again, she beat out an incumbent in a year that wasn't really too great for Democrats outside of New Hampshire. So she's a really good incumbent this time around, and she'd have the ability to win by 10 in the best case scenario, even though New Hampshire is going to be fairly close. Next to is Pennsylvania, and again, I don't think John Fetterman's going to win by anything. I think at best he wins by 4 or 5. But again, if the bottom truly does keep falling out for Dr. Oz, and if the Republicans do actually, there are rumors that they'll pull out of Pennsylvania. I don't think that they will, but there's a chance they do. And so if that does happen, the best case would be again Fetterman winning by maybe 7 or 8% in this absolute best case scenario for Democrats. And then lastly, Nevada has a smaller range of outcomes, so I won't do that yet. Well, for the Republicans, the best case scenario likely states for them, I don't really see any. So let's get into our lean Democratic states. That's funny of me. I already did the likely Republican states. My head was in the clouds for a second there. Lean Democratic states, that would be first off Arizona and Nevada. And actually, like you can make an argument for putting Arizona in the likely D column. I think at best Kelly wins by 6. Because Arizona has like a lot of ticket splitting, there's a lot of variance, and like again, there's a lot of potential for Democrats to win by a lot, but also lose by a lot. So I do think that Mark Kelly would end up in a best case scenario winning by maybe 5-6%. Again, the coalition would essentially be what he did in 2020, but with the continued trends in Maricopa and with suburbanites making up with Kelly doing better with suburbanites and then making up a higher percentage of the electorate. So yeah. And then in Nevada, Cortez Masto at best would win by 4 or 5. Again, not likely to happen, but kind of just holding on to the Biden coalition and doing better with Hispanics in Vegas is worth an extra few points at best. Then lastly, I think Georgia has a like smaller range of outcomes. I do think Raphael Warnock's more likely to win than Mark Kelly, even though they're both slight favorites in my book. But I think like Georgia's range of outcomes could be anything from Walker +3 to like Kelly or to Warnock +5. Whereas in Arizona, it could be anything from Masters +6 to Kelly +6. There's like a wider range of outcomes. I've said that a lot, but in Arizona than Georgia. So I think at best, Raphael Warnock wins by maybe just under 5% again. So yeah. Then lastly, I would probably put Wisconsin. Well, I don't know. I'll just put. I guess I'll be bullish on the Democrats here, and I'll put Wisconsin and North Carolina. And by the way, I moved Georgia to likely because I think there's a distinction that's worth making there between North Carolina and Georgia. So Wisconsin would be Democratic in this scenario because again, you'd have Mandela Barnes doing a lot better than Joe Biden in Milwaukee because Biden actually got not that great turnout from Milwaukee, and he actually didn't. He ran behind Clinton in the city. So it would be Milwaukee or it would be Barnes having Milwaukee do good turnout in the midterm and getting 4 or 5% better than Biden, him having better turnout from the colleges, which he's going to do because the colleges were in session in 2020, so that hurt Biden a lot. And then because again, rural voters in Wisconsin are more Democratic down ballot than they are presidentially. So like there are like a ton of Evers or Evers, Baldwin, Trump voters, and so in the best case scenario, again, some of them would vote for Mandela Barnes. So again, not saying it's going to happen, but at best he wins by 2 or 3. Same with North Carolina. I think Sherry Beasley would win by maybe 2.5 in the best case scenario for her. Again, for her, it would really be hoping that rural turnout it kind of be like the Georgia runoffs, having black turnout spike, rural turnout declining, and then keeping the suburbs pushing to the left. So yeah. Now, lean Republican at best Rubio or like at best for Val Demings, Rubio would run even with Trump. There's no way Val Demings wins. It's a race. Again, Marco Rubio is a really good incumbent, really well liked, and he could honestly he's more likely to win by like 12 than lose. So yeah, I think Rubio would at best for Demings only win by 3 or 4. So yeah, and then Ohio would be really close. I think Tim Ryan there's like a small chance Tim Ryan could pull it off, but I think it would be really, really close in the best case scenario. Like at best, he wins by half a point. At worst, he could lose by 10 or 11. So yeah, Tim Ryan would manage to pull it off by kind of getting the template for a Tim Ryan win would be getting the 2018 core Dre numbers with a working class. Because again, he's from a working class area. He has decent connections, and Vance isn't that great of a candidate. So getting the 2018 core Dre numbers, the working class, but doing a lot better in Cincinnati and Columbus suburbs and having decent turnout from the city of Cleveland. Again, not very likely to happen, but it's what it would take for him to win. So that's the Senate map, 54-46. Not my prediction by any means, but yeah, that's the best case scenario for the Democrats in the Senate. Let's talk about the governor's map. So you would have a map that would look kind of like, we'll talk about New Mexico in a second. It's one of those things here. So we're going to characterize all of these. And yeah, that's it for the safe Democratic states. New Mexico, I'm going to add there just to be a little bullish because again, Biden won it by and yeah, I'll put it in likely, but it's very close to safe because Biden won it by 10 or 11. And the thing with New Mexico is that Democrats in midterms have had a ton, they fared really poorly in 2014, but they've also won Senate races. God, what year was it? In 2014, they lost the governor's seats by 20 points, but held on to the Senate seat by 9%. So a lot of ticket splitting in New Mexico, but yeah. I think at best they'd win it by Michelle Lujan Grisham would win by a Biden type margin by doing worse in suburbs, better with Hispanics. I think we'll touch on likely Democratic states in a second. Now the Republican states still win a ton of states. South Dakota would be safe. Some people are saying it would be likely Republican. I think it would be safe Republican in the best case scenario for the Democrats. Alabama, and then Vermont and New Hampshire, even though, again, these are blue states presidentially, really popular Republican incumbents. Like, maybe Sununu would win by 15 in the best case scenario, but it's not really worth talking about because he's going to win by a lot, and it's just hard to gauge because we have no polling of the race, so we'll just leave it out just because it's not too much to talk about. So, next up for the Democrats, Oregon. First thing that comes to mind there. Again, this is a race I think the Democrats are going to win by a couple of points. It'll be close, but I still think they'll win it. But the thing that complicates Oregon is that, again, governor races in Oregon already was really weird. Like in 2018, it was the blue wave, but Kate Brown actually only won by like 7 points. In 2014, it was like every governor's race in Oregon is always really close for some reason. And so that's part of it. Another part of it is that there's an independent running who's going to get probably like 10% of the vote. Betsy Johnson, she's a former Democrat, so I think she'll get some Republican votes, but she'll probably affect the Democrats more. So that has potential to hurt them in Oregon. But yeah, in the best case scenario, they'd win it by like 9 or 10, and it would be like you kind of like a 50 to 40 to 10 outcome in the best case scenario. And then I mean, yeah, I think I'll do the Rust Belt here. So again, a lot of Rust Belt states here. First of all, I think Michigan would be like Michigan's already likely D, although I think it's on the lower end. At best, Whitmer would win by 9 or 10. Because again, she's up massively in every poll. She's has a 55% approval rating from what I've last heard. Tudor Dixon's a very bad opponent. She's made very bad statements about abortion and whatnot, and she's just, I think, a bad recruit for the Michigan GOP. Even though I was originally maybe a little more hopeful for her. So Gretchen Whitmer, I think, will win by 9 or 10 in the best case scenario, and kind of just mobilize all the Democratic votes in Michigan. Minnesota, Tim Walz will win by a similar margin again. Scott Jensen's a fine opponent. He's very average, but I don't think he's good enough to flip Minnesota. And in addition to that, Tim Walz is someone who I do think is going to do a little better than Biden in the Iron Range, in the working class rural areas. And then also, in addition to that, with voters with voters in the southern part of the state, because he represented a district that was now Minnesota one, which we had a special election in earlier this month, where the Democrats did surprisingly well. And so, yeah, I think that the Democratic Party would do a little better in the non-Minneapolis region of the state, and they'd run kind of even with Biden, the best case in Minneapolis. So it'd be a little better than what happened in 2020. Biden won Minnesota by 7. Walz would win by 10 in a best case scenario for the Democrats. Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, I think, is favored to win by maybe 3 or 4 right now. But again, best case, he'd win by 7 or 8, because here's the thing. The Republicans are not funding Doug Mastriano. He has no, a really ability to contest the airwaves because he really has no money. He has a hard time with, organizing as many events and whatnot as Josh Shapiro. And Mastriano is just not running a great campaign. Again, a lot of people think he's running a good campaign. I don't really know where that comes from. I think it's just vibes, really. But again, he's not really like running too much of a campaign because he doesn't have any money to pay for ads. He doesn't have any money to organize things. And he doesn't just have as wide of as big and as wide of a campaign as Josh Shapiro. So I think the best case, Shapiro would win by 7 or 8% if the bottom really does fall out for Doug Mastriano. Next up, we would have the state of Maine. Again, Paul LePage running here against Janet Mills. I think he was really hurt by the Dobbs ruling. Maine super pro-choice state, but has a more Democratic tendency. And I think best case, Mills would win by 6 or 7. So yeah, that's it for our likely D states. For our likely Republican states, first would be Alaska. Not too much to talk about there between Les Guerra, the Democrat, Bill Walker, the Independent, and then Mike Dunleavy, the incumbent. But I think at best Dunleavy would win by 5 or 6. Iowa, that's another one. I think Iowa and Ohio would both be, like I would vote for Reynolds by 10 in the best case scenario for the GOP, or in the best case scenario for the Democrats. And then in Ohio, best case for the Democrats, I mean, they'd probably lose by 10. Nancy really just doesn't really have a ton of money. She's behind in every major poll we've seen, and Mike DeWine's a popular enough governor to just win easily, honestly. So, yeah, I think Ohio, best case scenario, would go for DeWine by 9 or 10%. South Carolina is another one. Joe Cunningham doesn't really have any real chance of winning, but he'd bring it down to below a 15% margin. So, yeah, let's go on to our lean states. Lean Democratic states, Nevada. Arizona is another one that's close to likely, but since there's no incumbent there, it's a little harder for Katie Hobbs. But yeah, I think she went by 4 or 5 best case scenario for her. Again, it's similar to Kelly Coalition in Nevada. Same thing for Sisolak, be running even with Biden and Cortez Masto in the suburbs and in Washoe County, and then doing a little better than Biden and having better Hispanic turnout in the city of Vegas. Let's see what else is up next here. I think Kansas would be lean D at best. Kelly would win by like 2 or 3 because again, Kelly's coalition, like for Kelly to win, she'd need to like do really really well with pro-choice voters, and as we saw in the abortion referendum, the electorate that turned up was 59% pro-choice, and so if we do in fact see a Kelly get reelected, it would be because a lot of the pro-choice Republicans crossed over and voted for her, and then yeah, that's her path to victory. Not saying it's likely to happen, but it's just I think what would have to happen for her to win the best case scenario. Same with Georgia. Again, Brian Kemp is probably going to win that race, but again, best case, either Abrams manages to like narrowly pull out a win on election day, which is not likely, but her real like the real hope for Abrams is to bring Kemp to a runoff and then beat him in a runoff because that would change things a little bit. So yeah, I think in Georgia you would see uh, Abrams going to a runoff and then beating Kemp by like 2% in the runoff. I don't know. And then lastly, I think Wisconsin would be lean in a best case scenario for the Democrats. So it's not letting me click on it. That's not good. Okay, there we go. That was weird. It like wouldn't register. Yeah, Tony Evers in the best case. Oh, my mouse is like dying here. That's annoying. Anyways, Tony Evers in the best case scenario win by like 2. The argument would be that he would manage to hold on to his 2018 numbers in the rural areas and with working class voters, and then do a little better in the WOW counties, which again it's possible, but it's not likely. So yeah, our remaining 2 states. I think Texas best case scenario would vote for Greg Abbott by but 1 or 2. Again, I think people are underrating Beto a little bit in this race. That's not me saying he's going to win or really come close to winning, but people think Abbott's going to win by 12. The thing with Greg Abbott is that he's more polarized than he was in 2018. Democrats actually running a good candidate. Beto has a ton of money. In addition to that, the Democratic Party in Texas is a lot more competent now than they were in 2018 because they've now had actual elections to contest. And Abbott has a fair bit of baggage between Uvalde, the power outages, the abortion law, and yeah, I just like Beto has more momentum right now, and that gives him the ability to narrow this race up, but he doesn't really have a real chance of actually winning, in my opinion. Then lastly, Florida. I don't know if it's tilt or lean. I guess I'll just say it's lean Republican, but DeSantis will win by about a point less than Marco Rubio because Charlie Crist doesn't really have a real chance of winning, but the hope for him is that he gets it a little closer than people expect to kind of spook DeSantis and make him spend more money than he should have to. So, yeah, that's my best case governor's map again. Go back to the Senate map here: 54-46 to Senate, governors 26-24. But I mean, like maybe Beto would win the best case scenario for the Democrats. I don't know. I haven't thought too much about it, but like I'll still say, just because I know saying blue Texas nowadays is like very very scary. I'll say Abbott wins by a point in the best case scenario for the Republicans. So and for the Democrats, excuse me. So yeah, that's it. Next video tomorrow hopefully will be best case scenario for the Republicans. So the reverse of this. Again, I do want to clarify this is not my actual prediction. This is just best case scenario. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.